Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Feeling Seen, the podcast that talks about the movies that make us feel seen. Maybe you can hear it in the air, that special little difference. It's an in-studio recording, everybody. The magic is happening. And today, I am so excited to have a treasured person co-hosting this podcast with me. He is featured in the new horror anthology book, Haunted Reels, alongside many talented writers, but including friend of the show and previous guest, Ariel Vida. He has also worked on the production side in movies like Aporia, which is making its way through the genre film festival circuit now. He's worked on Disney's Haunted Mansion. He has worked on Muppet stuff, getting out there doing production work on Muppet stuff. The new Paw Patrol movie has work contributed by Malachi Moore. I am so excited to have Malachi on the show today because, as he says, self-described Renaissance man. What is it that the people need to know about you before we get started?
I think you said it all, Jordan.
Okay.
Truly.
Screenwriter. We got to say that because
Facts.
You are. I've read your work, and you know what? Like you said, you are out here modeling. Like, this is a time of people who are figuring out how to do every job in order to make it work until like their passion pursuit or focus pursuit niche is they're able to monetize it enough to make it a full-time career. But until then, we have to be out here available to every opportunity. And that is a critical part of surviving in this industry at present.
Facts. Truer words have never been spoken. I've had Renaissance Man in my Instagram bio for, I think since the early days of undergrad.
Okay. Well, and truly then, since undergrad, like that's since college, you were playing football at a Division I level.
I was.
Prior to this era of your life. So that's another texture we can put into this story.
Yeah, it was definitely like a maybe something I didn't realize that was going to put me through so much drama and stress, but it's allowed me to sit in the seat that I'm currently in, and I couldn't be happier with the progress and the process.
Well, and before we get to the main question of the podcast, since we have touched on the undergrad experience and Renaissance Man being a way that you have sort of factored into your identity for some time now, including your time as a college athlete, did you find that you could be a sort of coalesced identity of someone who enjoyed creative pursuits and elite level, like sort of constantly applying oneself, like a D1 athlete is a not fucking around kind of commitment, like, or did you feel a sort of like a compartmentalization of yourself around that time and your various facets?
That's a very good question, and I think there are layers to it. I think that football was just one of the many sides of who I was as a person, and even though I may have not been ready at the time to explore more aspects of myself, I knew that, or at least openly, I knew that I could do it on my own time. One of the good things I can say about my experience playing football in college is they do not lie to you about like how unlikely it is to have a career as a football player.
Damn, yeah.
And honestly, like, I didn't need much convincing. I was not trying to play football for, I was only trying to play football for as long as I had to, which meant getting an education and putting myself in a position where I could then explore more aspects of myself. I came from a very small town in New Jersey where opportunities weren't exactly throwing themselves at me, and I've always just I have a drive to know and learn more about myself, and I certainly did that through football. There are a lot of things I learned about myself in that way, and what I studied in undergrad, and the process of getting out of the perspective of being a football player. It was very hard and very stressful, but again, stressful things in life I've found bring a lot of clarity. So Yeah, I don't actually know if I even answered the question. But
No, we're finding our way. We're table setting for the rest of the conversation right now.
Yeah.
And what that has set the table for me is getting to the central question of the character recognition. And you have selected a monumental choice. Chris from Get Out. Daniel Kaluuya's Chris from Get Out.
Do they know I'm black?
No. Should they?
It seems like something you might wanna, mention.
Mom and Dad, my black boyfriend will be coming up this weekend, and I just don't want you to be shocked that he's a black man.
You said I was the first black guy you ever dated.
Yeah, so what?
Yeah, so it's just uncharted territory for I don't want to get chased off the lawn with a shotgun.
You're not going to. First of all, my dad would have voted for Obama a third time if he could have.
I really gave that question a lot of thought because, there are obviously more black male characters to choose from prior to 2017. But, when you really think about it, not really. Like, not really at all, especially in film as a lead protagonist. And as a young millennial born in '93, there really just weren't too many options. I feel like I was brought up in a time where I had just missed the shows that introduced a lot of black perspectives, where there was TV shows The Parkers or Girlfriends. There was a lot more diversity on TV, I feel like, in the late 80s and 90s than there were when I was growing up. I mean, shout out to Disney Channel. I loved That's So Raven. I loved The Proud Family. I love The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And that kind of brings me to my whole point. For the most part, Will Smith was really the only familiar face that I saw, both on the big screen and in television. His 90s to 2000s run was profoundly impactful for my self-esteem. Thanks to Will. Shout out to Will. Thanks to him, I grew up believing, truly that I was gonna be great.
So you could feel that sense of when you were watching that actor on screen, you could even if you couldn't name it at the time, it was I feel a sense of power just seeing this guy here being hey, what, me too?
Yeah, because he was just so cool and at the same time so corny, and that's me. I'm so cool and so corny. I mean, Men in Black, Wild Wild West, Bad Boys, Mike Lowry was the coolest. Mike Lowry was the coolest dude ever. I mean, even Independence Day, I, Robot. I Am Legend. Even Hitch. I feel like Hitch was, maybe a little too far on the corniness spectrum.
Yeah.
But looking back, that role was so monumental because it
Why
was.
so?
Because of how corny Hitch was.
Yeah.
You never see a black man experiencing emotional complexities or experiencing heartbreak or even just the way he dressed and asserted himself. It was almost he had a real Metro thing going to him, and I was yeah, I like that. I like the way he dresses. I like the way he this man definitely got mani-pedis.
Yeah. He had a skincare routine.
He had a skincare routine, facts. And there are definitely a few outliers there other than Will Smith that I saw growing up. I loved Omar Epps. I think I may have seen Blade too young at too young of an age, but
God, one of the best movies of all time.
I mean, you and I have talked about Blade, but yeah, Wesley Snipes was that guy.
Wesley Snipes was absolutely he was one of the biggest superstars in American cinema. He was one of the definitive superstars of my house growing up. A number of times I get on eBay and I look at an original one sheet of the movie Drop Zone, in which he plays a U.S. Marshal who has to infiltrate a group of skydivers to solve a crime.
I truly believe that he inspired a whole movement of alternative black men. Like, I love Dennis Rodman.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, Simon Phoenix is the Dennis Rodman of crime.
Bro. Yeah, and then, of course, like, you know, White Men Can't Jump. That was a great movie. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, any other people that come to mind. I mean, as a kid, again, growing up in the 90s, like, obviously Michael Jordan in Space Jam.
Sure,
you know,
yeah.
Was the coolest black man on screen. But yeah, you know, as I grow up and continue to learn more about myself, like, it really is not enough to only just to be able to see someone who looks like you. Mm-hmm. You know, seeing someone experience like complexities in their emotions, their sense of identity, their mental state, all of that is so important, and I don't think people realize just how vital it is. Perspective and circumstances are key, and I feel like, I mean, me personally, I just represent a very particular demographic of the Black experience. You know, like, I'm a nerd, truly. I'm very soft-spoken. Some might even say shy, I guess, until you have a conversation with me.
Sure.
I've lived in several different areas throughout the country, most of them being predominantly white. Thanks, Mom and Dad. No, but, you know, because of such, like, I was able to excel academically and athletically, but really at the expense of kind of having a firm sense of identity. You know, sports really filled that void for a very long time, and even when my mom passed in 2012, I just felt like, you know, even less whole and more confused than ever before. And this was really around the time that I turned to arts for self-expression.
I was going to ask when that happened.
Yeah. That's when Renaissance Man ended up in the Insta bio.
Yeah.
Because I really wanted to learn more about myself. But, you know, at the same time, I was still refusing to deal with a lot of uncomfortable emotions for a very long time. And I found myself relying on other people's confirmation of who I was or what I did in order to feel okay. And, you know, as a Black man in America, that is just so dangerous. Which brings me to Christopher Washington.
Yeah.
You know, Chris is someone who is like the shy, anxious, empathetic artist in that movie.
Oh, hey, hang on. Chris, I want to introduce you to some friends. This is David and Marcia Wincott, Ronald and Celia Jeffries, Hiroki Tanaka, and Jessica and Friedrich Walden.
Too many names to remember, but hi.
Do you find being African American has more advantage or disadvantage in the modern world?
Whoa! It's a tough one.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Hey. Yo, my man. They were asking me about the African-American experience. Maybe you could take this one.
Oh. Well, I find that the African-American experience for me has been, for the most part, very good. Although I find it difficult to go into detail as I haven't had much desire to leave the house in a while.
What is it, coming off the heels of such inspiration from folks like a Wesley Snipes or Will Smith, what brought you to the character of Chris? Why him? Why now?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, with those representations that were out in the 90s and early 2000s, you know, I mean, like I said earlier, it's one thing to see somebody that looks like you, but to then have a character that expresses, you know, emotional complexities with their mental state and their anxieties and, you know, how they're expected to react to their surroundings. I think Christopher Washington in Jordan Peele's Get Out is truly like the most significant representation that has come across. I mean, shit. Probably ever. Probably ever.
That's great. We love superlatives here.
Yeah,
We love superlatives.
Yeah. There are so many reasons why that movie is so impactful and touched a lot of people. But one of the things is just being able to see like a sensitive Black man, like as the leading man of a movie truly, Chris is not a fool, but his entire circumstance, like, and that's why I love what they do with the movie. Like, you know, in horror, your main character kind of has to ignore all the warning signs before it's like too late, and all of those warning signs in that movie are you know, very real circumstances of like a black man in an all white environment. He plays it cool because it's almost expected of him, and really tries to keep the peace in another like family's conflict.
Yeah.
You know, I think like one of the more uncomfortable scenes for me is when they're at the dinner table and the brother.
Oh God, Caleb Landry
Jeremy.
Jones.
Yeah, what great casting, by the way.
Incredible.
Shout out to Caleb for growing that crazy mustache, bro. That was so scary.
You ever get in street fights as a kid?
I did judo after school, first grade. Aw. You should have seen me.
Judo? With your frame and your genetic makeup, if you really pushed your body, and I mean really trained, you know, no pussyfooting around, you'd be a fucking beast.
Carrot cake.
Ooh.
Hi. Carrot cake. What did I miss?
Oh, a whole bunch of nothing.
Just talking about sports.
Hey. Yeah.
I mean, in hindsight, after seeing the movie so many times, you know that, like, I think that whole family kind of has a problem with Jeremy. Like, maybe he kind of is the black sheep of the family. He just, like, goes off the rails a bit too much.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy seems like this sort of unmaskable manifestation of their interior malignancy. And
Yes.
they can't contain him, and
They
they can't
can't
control.
contain
Like
him.
Allison Williams' Rose is a perfectly weaponized, like, double agent
Great
of the
casting.
white liberal racist woman. But like Jeremy's who you fear in a horror movie monster sense. Like, you're like, of course that guy I'm gonna walk on the other side of the street from because he's shifty as hell. Like, that mustache is freaking me out. Like, his energy is just like screaming trouble. But like, everything about Rose exists to welcome you in, and this family has, and they're so good. They're so good at what they think is an ingratiating persona that Chris is unnerved by from the start, but knows he has to play nice. But Jeremy is just
Absolutely.
the naked, screaming truth
Absolutely.
of their ugliness.
And he I mean, Chris is just so nice and just really wants to keep the peace. I mean, if he, in that scene in particular, he like almost like allows the ruse to continue because he plays along with whatever Jeremy is trying to talk about, his like his body and like his genetic makeup.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he didn't have, like, he could have he's the only person that should have taken offense of anything that happened in that scene, and yet he's still playing along. You know, I think he finally answers his question, even though he doesn't want to talk about MMA fighting. Regardless, but
well, that's like you know, people who are outliers in a context. Like, I got the chance to interview Christina Ricci for Bullseye, and she talked about how when she is, you know, she feels an instinctual reflex to people. Like, she's like, I'm very nice, I'm very welcoming, and like, she's like, and I like being that way with people. Like, I like making them feel warm and welcomed. She's like, but I'm also extremely safety minded because I am very small. So in every environment, I want to make sure that people are happy with me and that they like me because I don't want them to hurt me. And if somebody wants to hurt me, I want them to protect me because I'm very little. And she's also a public figure, which comes with its own advance kind of like
Sure.
noticed and sort of paranoia. And in an opposite way of that, and in an intensified, highly, highly intensified way of that in our America, like, you are a large statured black man. And Daniel Kaluuya is a very dark skinned black man.
absolutely.
And so I would imagine you become responsible in many spaces for everyone's emotions around you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, like, because of that, all black people are empaths to in some shape or form. It's why, like, I mean, even in this short story that I wrote in Haunted Reels, I mean, it talks a lot about how black people are, you know, just in particular, my main character is so affected by his surroundings that it can become too overwhelming at times.
Yeah.
yeah, I think that is like, you know, maybe if I had more conversations surrounding like anxiety. I mean, again, like Chris is also shown being a very anxious person. Like he's a smoker. He's always like has a nervous tick going on in the movie. Kind of the first time I saw anxiety being shown in black men, and like that was not. I want to say that like it wasn't acceptable, but that's not even the case. Like it was unheard of.
Right.
It almost like doesn't exist, which is crazy to me because I feel like we are.
If anybody's
one of the,
got a freaking reason.
Probably one of the more
to be like, wow, the
anxious
world's
group of
really
people.
getting to me, man.
Facts, and you know, I just think that like, what I strive to do and what I aspire to do is really to just have it so that my characters are afforded the same, you know, emotional complexities and nuances as other characters do in filmography. You know, Get Out really does a great job depicting Black people's fears and race relations, false allies, the coveting and appropriation of Black bodies, and even like racial microaggressions. Like the thing I love about the movie in particular is I think it just came out at the perfect time because those the Armitages plural are not necessarily racist in a 2016-2017 era. They are white liberals. You know, just such awkward situations of trying to find a way to respond to people being like, oh, I would have voted for Obama a third term. It's like, okay, right. Bro, like one, why did you feel the need to tell me that? And two, why have we all been collectively led to believe that like this was really a post-racist society just because Obama was in office?
How do you feel now?
I can't move.
You can't move.
Why can't I move?
You're paralyzed. Just like that day when you did nothing. You did nothing. Now, sink into the floor.
Wait.
Sink.
In conversation, I know I've heard you like just like colloquially use the sunken place like as a part of your vernacular now.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Like I would if I would love to hear you talk a bit about like when you heard that term and you saw it realized visually the way it was in that movie. Was there like a sort of clicking in that we're like, shit, that is what it's like, or like how was that?
Man, that scene in particular, I think hit a familiarity in every single Black person that went to see that movie. I mean, it's a term that really like defines not only a feeling, but I guess something that you see in others as maybe a consequence to the society that they live in.
Now you're in the sunken place.
I think they describe it in the movie as like your entire existence is only as a passenger. And you know, whether it's like internal or external, it's basically like subjugation. And I think there are a lot of examples that I will not name where that is pretty clear in Black men because it's so obvious. Like I don't think the sunken place is only for Black men or Black people in general. I just think it's definitely like the most blatant when you see it, that due to how one is brought up or how one is expected to be a quote unquote you know, manly man, or gosh, even just go with the times, like whether that be politically or sociologically. Yeah, things can get a bit confusing, whether you yourself know it or not. And I think when Chris like first goes into the sunken place, just how it's visualized in him, like still being able to see like through his own eyes, almost as if it's like a TV screen, but is just like floating there, and is in so much pain. It's almost like, yeah, I mean, it's
he's sitting there
like
silently shedding a tear as he's having to watch himself from below.
Yeah, and it's just so painful and like so impactful. But yeah, I think the sunken place is definitely more apparent in today's society than maybe ever before, and maybe that's just because like we get so much access to information now. Like we really like have a camera in everyone's face at all times.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe that's a good thing. Like I'm so glad that now we're even able to have conversations about like what is best for one's own psychology, and how to get there, and maybe the options that people have. Like first things first is recognition, and then to be able to have a conversation about it. You know.
Well, and I got the chance to interview Daniel Kaluuya when the movie came out, and it was such a fascinating time to interview him because it was right before this movie catapulted him into a different category of success. But he was a veteran actor at that point. Like, he'd been working for years. And I feel like there's no typecasting Daniel Kaluuya because his range is so incredible and his talent is so specific and amazing that you can't, like, he's not going to keep getting the same script over and over again because he's just capable of too much. Too much. There was an intensity and a sort of unfilteredness about him in interviews at that time because it was like, fuck it. Like, I'm not campaigning right now. Like, and I have no idea how this movie's going to be successful or not. But this just hit me so hard. I had to make this movie. And he talked about how, like, you know, feeling that thing at industry parties over in London and over here in the States of that, like, people needing to say, like, a quote unquote, like, black thing to him in an attempt to, like, what they thought was, like, bridge building.
Sure,
and he has to be responsible for making them feel like, that's okay. Like, I see what you're doing and it's cool.
To keep the peace.
And he talked about how, like, he was like, man, I don't even, like, he's like, I barely even go to those parties because I'm worried that if I do, I'm going to be a bad vibe. Because I just have to deal with that bullshit that I don't want to. So he kind of had started to self-select himself out of spaces and locations because he was like, listen, I'm going to start giving off a bad vibe because people are going to make me give off a bad vibe. So I'm just not going to go. It's hard,
man. And I would say that's from definitely earned, but definitely from like a privileged standpoint. Like, you know, any outing or anything that like I have to go to where I'm immediately awkward, it's like, yeah, that is the reason. You know, if I can't like fully express myself or feel like I have to keep the peace.
Yeah.
You know, it almost just comes with the experience. I don't think that I'm like experiencing or saying anything that, I mean, damn, black man, like black woman's entire existence is just that. And I mean, just another reason why Get Out, like, has been so impactful. I mean, not just to me, but I think a ton of people from what it's able to do. You know, it really does readdress like decades of erasure, abuses, cliches, and really just damaging tropes that have stained horror cinema, Hollywood, and U.S. history. You know, it does a great job of like reflecting our enduring fears and traumas, and really created a subgenre of black horror that really confirmed a lot of emotions that I experienced prior to that. And I think I don't think I'm being too extreme by saying that, yeah, like it definitely saved my life in being confirmed, like in those complex emotions being confirmed in myself.
It's time for a quick break. I'll be right back with more from Malachi Moore. Then I'll have one quick thing about a few movie recommendations for Halloween that will satisfy very different sorts of scary movie desires.
People say not to judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree. which is why here on Just the Zoo of Us, we judge them by so much more.
We rate animals out of 10 in the categories of effectiveness, ingenuity, and aesthetics, taking into consideration each animal's true strengths, like a pigeon's ability to tell a Monet from a Picasso, or a polar bear's ability to play basketball.
Guest experts like biologists, ecologists, and more join us to share their unique insight into the animal's world.
Listen with friends and family of all ages on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get podcasts.
It's the final week of Co-Optober. I'm Kira Gowan, Ad Operations Specialist, and I'm here with
Daniel Barwella, Technology and Data Specialist. To cap off National Co-op Month, we're sharing how worker-owned co-ops can benefit their communities. Read about it in our newsletter or on social media at MaxFunHQ.
We're also trying to do our part. We're volunteering at our local food bank this week, and we encourage you to volunteer in your area too.
On Friday, we're announcing the donation that you helped raise in the post-Max Fun Drive sticker sale, going to 5 food banks across the U.S.
And we want to make sure you know that this is your last chance to get our limited edition Co-op Launch Crew merch.
Grab a pin, hat, shirt, or hoodie before they disappear at the end of the month.
Details on merch, resources for volunteering, and all things Co-Optober can be found at MaximumFun.org/Co-Optober.
That's COOPTOBER. Thank you so much for your support and have a great Co-Optober.
Welcome back to Feeling Seen. This week my guest is Malachi Moore. A Division I football player in college, Malachi now has a multifaceted career as a writer, model, and filmmaker. He's feeling seen by Daniel Kaluuya's Chris in Get Out. What is it that, because if we have a century of cinema that reinforces like the bête noire, like the brutal buck stereotype dating back to Birth of a Fucking Nation,
sure, absolutely,
which played at the White House, what is it? What is it that is so scary about allowing for vulnerability to be what defines a black man on screen? Like, why is that frightening? Why is that not allowed? Like, how can that, if we are so afraid of this other terrible stereotype that has been created by white artists and purveyed by white like distributors, studios, what have you for so long, why is vulnerability and humanizing anxiety, why is that more scary and something harder to see?
That's a great question. I mean, I think it comes from both sides. Like, I think black men have always been portrayed in film and in television as either monstrous or this is a podcast. You guys can't see me quote unquoting.
Yeah, air quotes.
Yeah, air quotes. Less masculine or, gosh, I mean, any of those like harmful tropes, like the fool or Sambo. Or, we're going all the way back. I think that there's a side that wants to keep rehashing those tropes, and there's a side that wants to maybe not extremely, but definitely show a different side. And I think that subgenre of blaxploitation at the time did a lot of good for black male representation. I'm laughing because they're kind of like, they're not comedies now, but they're definitely like a way to see like how people were reacting to how black men were portrayed before that. It was almost like a bit over the top. Like, I think
like the "I'm gonna get you sucker" style of
definitely solving like all the problems with your penis. I think we've definitely moved away from that a little bit, but vulnerability is something that I think this entire country has a problem with, men in general. And I mean, I'm glad that I live in a time where we're definitely like getting away from that a little. The main point is that when you do see, these characters that go through these things, it humanizes them a bit more. I mean, I think that's why I'm here. I think that's why like I have such a passion and a vocation for not only working on myself and being as intimate and authentic as I can be, but also providing a space for my own characters to do that, you know.
And do you find that, like, in a Get Out world, and perhaps cinema that has been able to find platforming in a world where Jordan Peele has broken down barriers, do you feel comfortable writing your full, uninhibited, individualized perspective into your writing? Or is that something you've come to, like, you're coming to terms with? Like, what's your sort of path with putting yourself completely on the page when, like, that kind of possibility model, that's something that arrived in 2017, which is still very recent in our lives.
Yeah, very, very recent. I honestly, I think I'm still coming to terms with it.
Yeah.
You know, more so just dealing with the notion that, like, I don't want to be a part of producing and only showing, like, our struggle against oppression or Black trauma just because it's been proven to sell.
I remember having a conversation with J.D. Dillard once when he put Slight out about, like, him not having an interest in making a slave drama because he didn't feel that was his calling.
Yeah, and also, like, you know, more has happened to Black people than just slavery. And
it's been several centuries since those narratives.
Facts, you know, I mean,
crucial narratives, but there's been some time.
Yeah, literally. But, you know, I mean, the more I think about it, I think, like, you know, our stories don't always have to be about the struggle against oppression, but you know, the only imperative in Black stories is the same in non-Black stories, right? It's to convey our human struggle, whether it's, you know, with ourselves or society or families or communities. I think maybe my work in particular deals more with the self, because I think that's where I've struggled the most, and I think that's where a lot of Black men definitely struggle the most is just, like, self-discernment, really being encouraged to step outside of like the depictions that you see in media, and maybe just going in, like, a room and writing some shit down and, like, thinking of, like, what you enjoy. And that's tough. Like, there's definitely, like I said, like, there's a lot of, like, complex emotions that I didn't deal with in college that moving to LA, like, really allowed me to do. It was both a decision to almost run away from like my past, but also be able to deal with it and kind of, like, bloom from there. I love me some transcendental meditation.
You arrived in the right city then. You chose wisely.
Facts. Yeah, I mean, I think the older I get and the more I'm able to share my own stories with people that don't just look like me.
Yeah.
I think when it really comes down to it, people love honesty. And I think, you know, the more that I'm able to kind of sit with myself and meet people and meet like-minded people, you know, all of those faces differ. And it's been a beautiful process, truly.
What in the process of your writing has been one of your, you know, in terms of, like, you know, we're talking about identity here, it's a holistic picture. What has been one of your favorite sort of details about yourself to explore through your writing, or maybe figure out through your writing? Be like, damn, I keep going back to this theme, or, like,
oh man,
I'm really processing this part. Like, what's been one of the just meatiest cool things that you've liked digging into through your writing?
I'm actually so happy you asked this. Definitely my own sexuality. You know, as a straight man, I think I've been led to believe that there's really only one way to be a straight man. And, you know, that's, in hindsight, that's just so bonkers to me, because football players are, like, the gayest.
There's nothing gayer than a straight man.
No,
there's nothing gay, and there's nothing
more.
Straighter than men in sports. So
football players
hugely gay
are the gayest men I've ever met in my life, and maybe that's like. I mean,
it's an intimate process. You guys are all involved in all the time. Like, Jesus, like, bodies and impact, and, like,
it's so
Jesus.
intimate, like, not only physically but, like, emotionally. Like, you really do rely on the man next to you, and like, when you're in the trenches, quote unquote, in the trenches, like, yeah, you definitely form a bond with another man.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we eat together, we study together, we shower together.
These are relationships.
It's a relationship.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I mean, we've obviously had help from not just like film, but also music. You know, what it is to be a man is just so shallow. I've come to find, and lazy almost. Tyler James Williams just recently made a comment about his own sexuality and how, like, you know, being a straight man, like everything, is really a spectrum. Like, there's really no way, shape, or form to be a straight man. And again, here we are in like 2023, 2022, whenever he said it, like, of this just being stated. And, you know, with how much information, like, gets to us, it might have fallen on deaf ears, but I mean, it's just, yeah, like, that perspective is so important. I truly can't believe that everyone has just been okay with a shallow demarcation of their own sexuality, and it's kind of boring, to be real. Like, I don't just want to, you know, play Call of Duty or 2K and go to a bar and stand in the corner. Like, you know, I like to dance, I like to have fun, I like to do things that feel right. And like, part of me figuring out, you know, who I am was dealing with, like, that uncomfortable situation. Like, oh my God, like, am I gay because I listen to Katy Perry in the gym? You know,
of
like,
course.
And, you know, in hindsight, it's like, damn, dude, like, just like what you like.
Yeah.
You know?
But, like, that's, you know, that's the sort of state, the difficult state that masculinity is in, to, like, I feel like we're only on the threshold of coming out of a place where a reflexive response to, you know, maybe it's different for Gen Z. I can't speak to the kids.
Yeah.
But, like, millennials like us and up, like, the notion of, like, I'll listen to, like, hey, fellas, is it gay to listen to Katy Perry? Like, why wouldn't that question be reflexive? Because that's the brand of rigid masculinity that has been enforced across at a mass cultural level.
Absolutely. And too many insecure men are just in charge and, like, don't and fearful, honestly, and just really don't want to, like, you know, maybe consider those questions for themselves. And it goes back to your question of, like, why aren't these perspectives being shared, like, to humanize Black men? And yeah, I mean, you know, looking in the mirror, like, I'm sure there are a lot of drawbacks from current or even former generations of men trying their absolute best to portray what we thought to believe were like masculine males in cinema, based off the toxic tropes that were shown about Black men, whether you know we think it is or not. Like, it's very harmful, and it's just a no-no in my book.
You're making me realize that, like, I need to do more work. And, like, I'm talking and thinking about, like, queerness all the time, my own personal experience with it and generally, but, like, I want to have more conversations about the spectrum of straightness.
I think we should.
Because just
I really think we should.
Just the statement of, like, the spectrum of straightness, like, I feel my body, like, revolting when I even say it, but it's like, no, stop doing that. Don't be a bitch about it. Because, like, inviting the notion, setting the table with the notion of the spectrum of it, it's like, no, but explore your heterosexuality the way, like, a queer person can explore their homosexuality or asexuality, like mine. Like, but find the dimension in it. Like, find the specificity of your specific existence in this. And hey, when you're straight, you don't necessarily have to do that work, because there's a lot that's just made ready for you with examples and blessings from society and normativity. But, like, don't be boring.
It's just the path of least resistance,
yeah.
I think. And I think maybe just in this country in particular, like, we're so attuned to that. Like, if it's easy, then it's right for me.
Yeah.
You know, and that is just not a perspective or really a luxury I've ever been afforded throughout my entire life. Like, life has always been difficult, and it's, I mean, again, like, it's one thing that football was able to kind of instill in me, is that, like, things that are tough, things that are difficult are what's worthwhile, whether it's physical or mental. And I'm definitely not gonna like yell at every man that I come across the street to like paint their nails or anything. But like, how do you think your lady would feel like if you got a mani-pedi with her? Or like
and took it seriously.
Yeah,
like, and not just like as a joke, but you were just like, let's have a nice time together.
There are straight men just do not know. Like,
help yourself.
Help yourself.
Help yourself.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I guess the way that I would like to wrap this up with you is I just so enjoy talking to you all the time, Malachi.
Likewise, Jordan.
Do you feel like you are, to your own like desire, sufficiently accessing sort of like your imagination for what is possible for you?
Thank you for asking that question, Jordan. I think knowing myself, I think I'm a very ambitious and relentless, maybe somewhat delusional person, and
you gotta be out in this town.
Hey, I mean that's why LA is like
absolutely
perfect for me. But like a dream is really a delusion, and I think I've seen so many examples of dreams coming true, and I know that I'm in a position and mindset to be able to like have those dreams come true. And yeah, I think that like the more I explore not only myself, but things that have come out like post Get Out, thanks to the complexities that were shown in that man.
Absolutely.
Like great movies like Sorry to Bother You or Waves or Loose with Kelvin Harrison Jr., Native Son, which was a book prior to it coming out, but I have to shout out Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, for his relentless work in showing complexities in black men.
I don't think there's anybody who makes anybody look more beautiful on camera than Barry Jenkins. Just flat out. Nobody looks more beautiful on camera than if they're in a Barry Jenkins set.
I could not agree more. Gata in Dave, if you've ever seen Dave
people love
before.
Dave. I've not watched Dave, but the people love Dave.
Dave it's actually absurd how compelling Dave is. But yeah, Gata is probably the best representation of mental health in black men like ever, truly. I just started watching Sex Education, where Kedar Williams Sterling is an athlete that like deals with profound anxiety that I've never seen before, and even like Big Mouth with Devon and like his code switching song. These are really great examples of things that allow me to, I guess, like make my own thoughts and imagination a bit more concrete in terms of how that can look.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very excited for the future. Like every day I wake up and I'm able to kind of like put words to thoughts, and yeah, I mean the great thing about writing is that it's really on my own time.
Yeah.
Like
for better or worse.
For better or worse. Yeah, no, it really is, and yeah, it's always a stressful process, but that's pretty much my middle name at this point.
Well, Malachi, I look forward to seeing your ambitions and your dreams get bigger and bigger over time.
Likewise, Jordan.
And having this little seat here to watch it. And thank you so much for coming on. I so appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Thank you so much, Jordan. You truly are a gem, and I appreciate you profoundly.
Thank you for coming. Thank you so much to Malachi Moore. You can find his story, Desire Paths, in Dark Matter's Haunted Reels anthology. And now I have that one quick thing before I go. This time around, it will be a couple of movie recommendations for the season. Halloween approaches, and I had one that I was thinking of that's just like, it's so intense and aggressive that it felt bad just having that be the recommendation, because I was like, wow, like what if people don't want that? So it was the first movie that popped to my mind. If you want to have just a really stressful time watching a kind of home invasion movie that is one that might not have come up on your radar before, it is called Angst. It is from 1983. It is an Austrian horror film. I believe the English title is just Fear. not the Mark Wahlberg, Reese Witherspoon movie Fear, a different one. And it is about a serial killer gets out of prison and is absolutely not redeemed or repentant in either way, and he is ready to kill people again, and he ends up breaking into the home of a woman. And it is, I put it on, just came up in the algorithm once, I was like, oh, this looks upsetting, and oh my god, it is a deeply upsetting, very surprising, very brutal movie. If you want something that will just really get to you, this one's not for everyone. But if you're looking for something intense, and maybe outside the general box of home invasion movies, this one will deliver for you. If you're looking to feel bad by the time you finish a movie, and then so the second one to bookend that, if you want a completely different tone, the silly and surprising little indie slasher from 2019, The Banana Splits movie, from director Danishka Esther Hazy, who I'm just so impressed by, who's also made the movies Level 16 and did the Sci-Fi Channel Slumber Party Massacre remake. She has such a way with a small budget to make movies like really good, really fun, really works within her confines extremely well. And this movie is about a little kid who wants to go see the very last taping of this children's show, and it's old and it's busted and it's a weird scene, weird vibes. But the people who go to see this final taping, they end up getting trapped in the studio, and the animatronic creatures that are the stars of the show start wigging out and trying and killing everyone. So it's, like I said, it's silly, it's over the top, it's giant fuzzy bear creature kinds of robots hack and slashing people. So that's the levity balance, that's the more horror comedy balance to my angst recommendation. Not really a double feature, I won't call it that, but if you just want one kind of night or the other, those are my suggestions for you. And so that's it. That's our show. Happy watching. You can follow us on Twitter at FeelingScenePod, or send us an email at feelingscene@maximumfun.org. If you want to follow me, I'm JorCrew on Twitter. Our theme music is by Andrew Epen. This show is produced by Marissa Flaxbart. Our senior producers are Kevin Ferguson and Laura Swisher, and this is a production of Maximum Fun.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
supported
Directly by you.